The following episode is brought to you by FFBcast. Stay tuned for your very own custom podcast, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.
You are listening to the PhillyPool2019 Fantasy Football Podcast brought to you by FFBcast. I am your host, Joseph Hoppy, and today we are recording the Week 1 recap episode where we are going to be taking a look at your overall standings to conclude Week 1 and then also your individual scoring, since this is not a head-to-head league, although this is one of the most interesting leagues that I've ever done one of these podcasts for. So we'll look at your individual scoring, individual players. We'll talk about players that scored the most at their position, the most on each of your individual teams as well. And then we'll look at Week 2 and what's to come in Week 2, some of the matchups that we like best. We'll also pass along some judgment on your teams as well as we go throughout this podcast, and we'll hint towards some of the auction prices that you guys paid for players. We'll talk about some of the prices that we like the best and some of the prices that we like the least getting around throughout the episode. So hopefully you guys enjoy this. It may be a bit difficult considering the structure of the league, but I got to give it to you guys. Pat yourselves on the back for being one of the more creative leagues and one of the actually more interesting leagues that I've seen thus far. All right, let's get into the overall standings, or shall I say the points leaders, due to the fact that this is not a head-to-head matchup scoring league. This is a points league. I'm actually in favor of points leagues. This one, there's no records. You're not, if you're the most scoring team, you're not 9-0 in this league, or 0-9. Vice versa. But what I do like is that it's judged on points. So atop the list with 149 points in Week 1 is Team New Era. 149 is 7 more than the second place team that scores 142. Team Strategy. Those two teams are comfortably ahead because the third ranked team scores 111 points, 31 points less than the second-ranked team. That is Team Ill Considered. Ill Considered and Little Red Fournette are neck-to-neck. Little Red Fournette with 108 being the fourth-place ranked team right now. In fifth place with 104 points, The Process. Team The Process is about middle of the pack here. In this 9-team league, and 103 points just behind him, Team Moscow. Now, wrapping up the bottom 3 teams, Lights Kamara Action with 97 points, Easy Breezy with 92 points, and then Team The Wild Samoans finds himself dead last by a mile with only 65 points in Week 1. So quickly, just to recap, the top 3 teams, New Era, Strategy, and Ill Considered, with 149, 142, and 111 points, followed by Little Red Fournette with 108. Then the middle is The Process with 104, followed by Moscow with 103. Then the bottom 3 teams, Lights Kamara Action, Easy Breezy, and the Wild Samoans wrap up the back of the pack. Now that does it for our league standings. Let's move on to our individual scoring and overall performances of Week 1.
You're listening to an FFBcast podcast. For more custom content, visit us online at ffbcast.com.
With this league scoring being very touchdown heavy, and the longer the touchdown, the better, with bonus points for yardage instead of points per yards or fractional points per yards. We have some very odd scoring here, but odds not always bad. Let's start with the process. Our number 5th place team to conclude week 1. The process gets 6 points from quarterback Baker Mayfield and 20 from Kyler Murray. Remember, we are starting 2 quarterbacks, 2 running backs, 2 receivers, 3 flex. Wow, I love this team more and more, or this league, I'm sorry. So we've got a lot going on here, a lot of zeros from Freeman, Howard, Aaron Jones, Odell Beckham, Brandon Cooks, and Tyreek Hill. You're also going to be without Tyreek Hill for, it looks like, 4 to 6 weeks with that broken clavicle. He was taken to the hospital. The clavicle, I guess, went behind his sternum after it broke and was in danger of puncturing arteries. So they did take him to the hospital. He's fine now. Like they say, 4 to 6 weeks for recovery time. But your next player here definitely puts up a big number. Deshaun Jackson getting those long touchdowns, exactly what you need in this type of league. And I love this team. It's actually really built for the breakaway plays here with Deshaun Jackson, Tyreek Hill, Brandon Cooks, and Odell Beckham. Evan Ingram as well. And Evan Ingram puts up 11 points in this one. He had a hell of a show out. But, I mean, that Giants offense is going to be his Achilles heel. So we'll see how that plays out through the rest of the season. I do expect him to still get double-digit targets nearly every game. So he is a fair play for you week in and week out. Justin Tucker here puts up 11 points. Seems as though kickers may be the option here. I would consider flexing kickers or making kickers flexible, getting rid of the kicker position and making them flexible. That would certainly make this a little bit more interesting, although it may be bombarded by kickers then, and I'm not sure we want more kickers. That's not something that I advocate for. New Orleans Saints defense gets this team 10 points, and then the Seattle Seahawks gets them 11 as well for a total of 104 points, which is good enough to put them just in the middle of the pack at 5th place. Now let's take a look at some of the players on their team and how much they paid. Jordy pays $255 for Baker Mayfield, and Baker puts up a 6-point performance in week 1. That's a little bit rough there, comparing him to what some of these other quarterbacks went for. Hindsight is always 20/20, but Lamar Jackson went for $34, and we know what he did in week 1. Tom Brady, $13. So I won't hassle you too much there on the Baker Mayfield pick because Kyler Murray, $50. Still a little bit more than I would like to have paid for him, but I mean he gives you a decent performance here. So that's a fair price to pay for your quarterback position overall, considering that you're getting these very boom, high ceiling, what we assume to be high ceiling guys before the season started. So good luck there. I mean, hopefully Baker's going to have better days ahead of him. Devontae Freeman just had a bad week, and I'm not sure he will perform too much better against the Philly defense, but I do expect Jordan Howard to get a touchdown in this one against the Falcons. Aaron Jones seemed to be in more of a timeshare than we liked, and Odell Beckham was hindered by Baker Mayfield's 3 picks. Tyreek Hill, you're going to have to find a replacement for him. Maybe LaShawn McCoy comes that guy, unless you're looking for some vultured touchdowns by Latavius Murray. Marquise Brown, to me, a bit of a fluke. But, of course, you're holding on to him and you're stashing him. He was left on the bench, and he scored 36 points. Big game for him, 2 long touchdowns, and obviously helped aid that amazing performance by Lamar Jackson. Now let's move on here to strategy. Team strategy was bolstered by Matt Ryan and Carson Wentz, who scored a combination of 52 points. A great performance here, great output by their quarterbacks. That helps them get to the 142-point total that earns them the second overall rank. This team also had Ezekiel Elliott, who puts up 9 points, and Derrick Henry with a whopping 27 points. Damian Williams as well gets into the end zone, and he gets 6 points in this one. Michael Gallup, he went off, and unfortunately, it's only worth 6 points in this league, even though he puts up, I believe it was nearly 146 yards. I will check that to be sure. But Alshon Jeffrey, too, puts up 12 points. He finds the end zone. And Dede Westbrook, 6 points. Eric Ebron gets 0 points. And Travis Kelce, only 2 in this one, eclipsing yardage totals. So Greg Zuerlein here, 16 points. Like I said, these kickers seem to be scoring a lot more than most of these players. Maybe that's something that you want to adjust, knowing that kickers are purely luck. But hey, I've got a note here that says this team's been going on for 30 years, or this league, excuse me. So congratulations to you guys for all getting together and doing this, and congratulations for maintaining a league for 30 years. I mean, you guys had to have been doing it on newspaper. That's amazing. So it's an honor to be doing this recording. Let's get back into it here with team strategy and move on to their defense with the Chiefs and the Jaguars. They put up 16 and 6 points, or I'm sorry, 6 and 0 points respectively. Malcolm Brown was left on the bench in this one. He puts up 12 points, but I'm not sure that's anybody that we would have started. Devin Singletary is on the bench along with Robert Woods. That was a very gutsy sit there with Robert Woods, but he only puts up 2. The only thing that I see that could have been done differently, I guess Robert Woods over Ebron, but what are you going to do there? So Malcolm Brown seems to be the backup to Gurley, basically rendering Darrell Henderson useless. I've been seeing Henderson getting dropped a lot after he was hyped up to the 6th round this offseason. Now let's talk about some of the dollars that were spent on this team. Wentz was 210, along with Matt Ryan, 137. Now let's compare that to Jordy's team when he paid $255 for Baker and $50 for Kyler. So Jordy only throwing $305 at his quarterback position. John, on the other hand, $347 total at his quarterback position. But John here definitely looks like he made the better move. Just viewing the results of Week 1, that may not be the case throughout the entirety of the season, but Matt Ryan and Carson Wentz is a hell of a combination to have. Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray are not so bad, but I'll take the proven over the unknown. Now, let's look at some of the running backs on his team, specifically Devin Singletary. Devin Singletary in line now to get a lot of work after the Bills released LaShawn McCoy. Devin Singletary played a buttload of snaps this week, but his usage was not representative of that. Frank Gore, on the other hand, did quite the opposite. Frank Gore played a few amount of snaps, but was basically given the ball on the majority of the snaps that he played. That is not indicative of how it's going to be going forward. I think the snap count is more indicative of the future workload. So Devin Singletary, a possible start for you in the future. As long as Gore's not vulturing every single touchdown, I think Devin Singletary is a candidate who is on the uprise. One of the guys specifically that Devin Singletary may be replacing in your lineup is Damian Williams, who you spent $54 on. Now, that was a fair price until we saw LaShawn McCoy break out for over 80 yards and over 8 yards a carry as well. With the fewer touches that he had He was way more effective than Damian Williams. I expect LaShawn McCoy to take over the number one workload duties of this Kansas City offense. So hopefully Damian Williams can still remain relevant as a flex play with occasional touchdowns here and there, so a few receptions, but I don't see him eclipsing the yardage totals that he'll need to be relevant in this type of league. So moving on to the receiving core, Alshon Jeffrey, Dede Westbrook, Robert Woods, 25 for Dede, 23 for Woods. Very surprising there. A weak receiving core in my opinion. And like I said, a little bit too pricey on Dede Westbrook. He should definitely not be going for more than Robert Woods. And you could have spent that money better elsewhere. Good thing Gallup looks to be the real deal. That's somebody you might be able to deploy on a matchup-based kind of week-to-week matchup basis. And let's move on to the tight end where Travis Kelce was $152, Eric Ebron $21, $152. The obviously the most for any tight end, but the most by nearly $34 is it? Ertz. Kittle goes for $73, and then the next closest is O.J. Howard at $69. I do see a $1 tight end here. Evan Ingram goes for $21 in this league. So that's quite a deal there. Those middle-of-the-pack guys seem to be the better deal. Hunter Henry, $26. Now we know, though, that he does have a fractured kneecap. But moving on here to the defenses, $29 and $12. Just way too much. I don't think I'd be spending very much at all on defenses in this league. I like Joseph's strategy with Dallas and Buffalo, two $1 defenses. And we will see how that worked out for him when we cover his team. So we'll move on here to Team Little Red Fournette. Team Little Red Fournette has Phillip Rivers and Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, only 6 points. Phillip Rivers, though, 32 points in this one. Quite the game for Phillip Rivers. He definitely meets his $106 price that was required to purchase him. Aaron Rodgers, 201. A bad matchup against the Bears and another bad matchup against the Vikings this week. So Rodgers looking like a buy low candidate for trades. I would stash him. I like the way he seemed confident in the offense. I think he's definitely got better days ahead. He's not going to be playing the Bears every week, but he will play them once more. Todd Gurley goes for $133 on this team. That's probably one of my favorite buys at the running back position, although Todd Gurley here, only 4 points. We talked about Malcolm Brown vulturing 2 touchdowns from Gurley. Leonard Fournette puts up 2 points in this one, and then Christian McCaffrey puts up 20 points. So probably the best running back trio in the entire league with McCaffrey, Gurley, and Fournette. McCaffrey, though, a little pricey, 201. I think definitely worth it when you compare it to the most expensive back in Saquon Barkley. Definitely a hefty price, over $200 to pay for any player, but he's definitely worth it. Moving on to the receivers here in Tyler Lockett, Dante Moncrief, and Dante Pettis. Hopefully better days for Pettis and Moncrief. Moncrief, though, seeing the most targets on that Pittsburgh Steelers team. Tyler Lockett gets 12 points in this one, eclipsing 40 yards in his lone catch that went also for a touchdown. So 12 points is quite generous for Lockett here, even though his usage and his efficiency was just outrageous. Houston Texans and Rams defense put up 2 points and 9 points respectively, while tight end David Njoku puts up 6 points. Njoku gets a touchdown. Harrison Butker, 15 points here, just scoring more than Rodgers, Fournette, and Gurley combined which is just kind of ridiculous when you think about it. So, I mean, I'm not going to tell you guys what to do here, but like I said, maybe that needs to be adjusted a little bit. AJ Green on the bench. AJ Green, one of my favorite buys of the auction. AJ Green goes for $8. And Darrell Henderson also on the bench, who was kind of rendered useless due to Malcolm Brown. So let's move on here. After looking at that 108 performance by Team Little Red Fournette, good enough for fourth, we'll be taking a look at the last place team, Wild Samoans. Wild Samoans gets 10 points out of their two quarterbacks. Jared Goff and Jameis Winston score 4 and 6 points respectively. Saquon Barkley, the most expensive running back in the draft, puts up 6 points. And then Kenyon Drake, a big fat 0. Kenyon Drake, a very disappointing outing. And Duke Johnson, 2 points, maybe a little bit of surprise. Duke Johnson may be a good option out of that Houston backfield. Miles Sanders, though, 0 points. I expect his usage to go up. Hopefully, Jordan Howard does not vulture all of those touchdowns, though, and making Miles Sanders useless in this type of league. Amari Cooper, Chris Godwin, and Calvin Ridley put up 10, 6, and 6 points. That's just, I mean, not enough there, not enough to get it done. I like what Amari Cooper did. Chris Godwin and Ridley are getting the touchdowns, but when you have consistent single-digit scoring from your position groups, that's not going to be good. That's why this team ends up with 65 points and finds himself in last place. Mark Andrews, though, 10 points, and kicker Brett Maher puts up 5, as well as the two defenses putting up 5 points each. Let's take a look at the bench here. Derek Carr puts up 6 points, and those are the only points scored on his bench. I guess Carr could have been started over Goff, but that's not anything that I think any of us would have went with prior to these matchups. So like I said, 65 points there from Wild Samoan. Hopefully this is not any kind of indication of what the team is going to be like. I think definitely you'll get better outputs from your quarterback positions. $198 this team spends on Jared Goff and $75 on Winston. I think those are fair prices. It's hard to say now because Winston looked so terrible. He did. But I also like the $10 on Carr kind of as insurance. Definitely, you should be able to get some good production out of those three as long as you mix and match. Saquon Barkley here, $258, the most expensive running back in the auction. Duke Johnson, Miles Sanders, Kareem Hunt, and Justin Jackson are the other running backs here, with Duke Johnson and Miles Sanders going for $49 and $40. So Kareem Hunt, $11. Not sure I would have spent anything on him as he sits and waits. And then Justin Jackson for $1 was definitely, I think, a good pick there. I would have went in another direction as far as Duke Johnson. We weren't quite exactly sure how he would split the workload in Houston. But Miles Sanders, 2 for $40, a little bit pricey as well. When you look at Kerryon Johnson going for $43, Tevin Coleman for $19. Now we know he's injured, but before that it looked like quite the deal. I think Devontae Freeman was a good deal at only $82, so you could have packaged both of them together to get him, which I would have preferred actually. And then you have guys like Tariq Cohen going for $5. So not the route that I would have went, but the path that you paved. So you have to deal with it now. Maybe you can find something on the waiver wire. There's a lot of injuries going on, so you might be able to find a good touchdown likely running back this week, going into week 2. So let's move on here. I don't want to spend too much time on the last place team. Sorry about that one there, Samoans, but it is what it is, right? Lights Kamara action. They're led by Jimmy G and Matthew Stafford, who score a combination of 40 points, 12 and 28. Garoppolo puts up 12, Stafford 28. Dalvin Cook and Kamara, though, definitely put up some points at the running back position. Dalvin Cook 19, Kamara at 6 points. David Montgomery puts up a big fat 0 along with Mike Evans. Kenny Galladay, probably the best buy of the entire auction, 6 points. Kenny Galladay, I don't understand how you guys were sleeping on him so much, but that's just, I mean, he's definitely gonna be like the player that gets you to the playoffs when you only spend that little amount of money on such a player. Curtis Samuel gets 0. Juju Smith-Schuster, a poor performance with 2 points, eclipsing the yardage mark. Jared Cook puts up 0 points, and then Will Lutz 17. So Will Lutz putting up more points than Kamara, Montgomery, Evans, Galladay, Curtis Samuel, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Jared Cook combined. Yes, I said that. Will Lutz scored more than Kamara, David Montgomery, Mike Evans, Kenny Galladay, Curtis Samuel, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Jared Cook combined. The defenses here, Colts and Steelers, put up 6 and 1 respectively, enough to earn Lights Kamara action, a 97-point total, which earns them the third to last place. Not the worst start, I guess. You could be Team Wild Samoans, but not what you were hoping for there. A lot of duds, and then a lot of low outputs from your stars, such as Kamara and Juju. But let's take a look here at the prices that were paid for some of these players. Specifically, I want to take a look at Jimmy G, $8. I think that's a good buy, even though he had a poor performance in Week 1. Matt Stafford had a great performance in Week 1. He went for only $12. Sam Darnold goes for $16. And then Roethlisberger, $140. So Roethlisberger, obviously the outlier here with $140. I could have gone without that and spent that money elsewhere, say at your tight end position, or maybe even receiver. But getting Galladay for 18 points, I believe it is, or I'm sorry, $18. Galladay definitely a steal there. You could have maybe took that 140 and got yourself a guy like Devontae Adams. If you combine that 140 that you spent on Ben, maybe with a little bit of money from Curtis Samuel, then this team would definitely be dangerous. To get Kamara for 195 is very fair. He is going to perform. He's in a high-power offense. He's going to get those touchdowns, even though Latavius Murray will vulture some. Dalvin Cook, he definitely showed that he's going to be a workhorse and the type of player that you want for this league. He gets 2 touchdowns in this one. And looks to be just the guy that this Minnesota offense is going to be running through. David Montgomery, on the other hand, quite the opposite. Looks like he's in a split between him, Cohen, and Mike Davis. A heavy split here, a 3-headed monster it looks to be in Chicago. So I'm not sure he's going to be one of your more effective guys. And then to get Gordon for 46, I think is not a bad option. When he comes back, you're definitely going to have a hell of a player who sometimes has been dependent on his touchdowns to make him an RB1. So definitely a good player to have in this type of scoring. Just when he comes back, nobody really knows, but I think we're all assuming he'll be back sometime by week 10. So to spend $46, like I said, it's fair. I mean, he could be a difference maker like Kamara, and you spent $195 on Kamara. So if you get a fourth of the season out of Gordon, you spent a fourth as much as you did on Kamara. So you can look at it that way. Juju Smith-Schuster, though, 150, and Mike Evans, 133. Mike Evans looking dangerously closely tied to Jameis Winston as far as his production will go, and Winston not looking too dangerous. Actually looking dangerous and detrimental to his own team, but not scaring any defenses, let's say that. Kenny Galladay and Curtis Samuel, $18 each. Great buys here. Love this team. Think this team can make a push for the playoffs. Bad start, but definitely better days ahead. Moving on here, Team New Era, led by Tom Brady and Christian Kirk. Brady, I don't know how he keeps doing it, but he is defying time, and Tom Brady puts up 34 points in this one. Christian Kirk, 12 points. Le'Veon Bell, Austin Eckler, and David Johnson are this team's running back group. Le'Veon Bell, 11 points. He is now going to get an MRI on his shoulder, I believe. So maybe you may want to keep a close eye on Ty Montgomery. Ty Montgomery, a little shifty back there. I'm not sure he'll be used at the goal line, but he might be able to break one. Let's see here. David Johnson, 15 points, and Austin Eckler with the walk-off OT win gives you 33 points. Austin Eckler is partly the reason why this team is in first place overall. New Era ranked number 1 to conclude week 1. 149 points does it. Austin Eckler giving you 33 alone. That definitely helps. With a lot of consistent scoring, though, only 2 zeros, one of which is from the tight end, the other from wide receiver Stephon Diggs. But wide receiver Julian Edelman gives you 2, Julio Jones 6, and then Allen Robinson gives you 4 points. Zach Ertz, the tight end, that gives him 0. Unfortunate from a tight end that you pay so much for. I believe Zach Ertz was the second most expensive tight end with 118 points. That is correct as I check the auction sheet here. Robbie Gould, 11 points. Robbie Gould, I believe now injured, so you'll want to look for a new kicker. That's why you never spend more than $1 on your kicker, because they are very replaceable and random. Patriots and Vikings defense put up 11 and 10 points respectively. Very consistent scoring here. Brady gives you over 30. Eckler gives you over 30. Congratulations to the first place ranked team after week 1, New Era, although it is a long season. Dak Prescott left on the bench. Marlon Mack left on the bench. This team definitely could have done a lot more to solidify a playoff spot for themselves, but a great start nonetheless. Okay, welcome back. We have 3 teams yet to go. One of the 3 teams, actually the third place team, Ill Considered puts up 111 points this week, led by the MVP of the entire week, of the league, of your league, of the NFL league, of everybody's league, Lamar Jackson. He puts up 51 points in this one. And then to also have Patrick Mahomes put up 37 points, I mean, that is going to give you a lot of margin for error. And speaking of margin for error, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 zeros from the rest of this squad. 7 zeros, yes. That may be more than any other team, yet this team is in third place, and you can see why when Lamar Jackson puts up 51 and Patrick Mahomes 37, a combined 88 points from the quarterback positions here. Let's take a look. Matt Breida is one of those zeros. Nick Chubb gives you 2 points. Royce Freeman, Sony Michel, Will Fuller, Cooper Kupp, Mike Williams, and O.J. Howard all give you zeros as well. Kicker Jake Elliott doesn't cut you much of a break either. He only gives you 5 points compared to the double digits that other kickers have been scoring. And then the Bills defense 10 and Cowboys 6. That's 111 points there. The majority of it coming 88 points off of the quarterback position. Patrick Mahomes, the most expensive player in the entire draft. He costs $331. Lamar Jackson may be the steal of the auction draft here with $34. So a total of $365 spent on the quarterback position. Absolutely ridiculous, but the results are there. You get what you pay for, obviously. Actually, that's not always true. And we've seen that by looking at some of these other teams. But moving on here, Nick Chubb, $171, a little bit pricey for Nick Chubb. Not as much as I'm willing to pay for Nick Chubb, but he, being the basically only legit running back on his team right now while Kareem Hunt is out, may just be in line to score a lot of points in this type of league. Sony Michel goes for 96. He, assumingly being the Patriots' goal line and touchdown running back, but we've seen them use so many running backs, including Brandon Bolden, Rex Burkhead, Sony Michel, James White. I mean, they'll even get James Devlin in there, the fullback. It's really hard to figure out on a week-to-week basis. Now, Matt Breida here, $44. Somebody must have been psychic and known that Breida was going to be the number one guy here in San Francisco. I like Breida, although I'm not against what you paid for him. It's not what I would have liked to have paid for him, considering like his value prior to the draft. Darwin Thompson here is droppable, and then Royce Freeman was definitely a steal. Cooper Kupp, Mike Williams, Will Fuller make up his top three wide receivers. Maybe Marquez Valdes-Scantling and Sammy Watkins actually take over the latter two, because Valdes-Scantling, $21, and Watkins, $20, find themselves in very opportunistic situations. Cooper Kupp, $71 here, not bad for him. Mike Williams, a little bit pricey, $61. Will Fuller, $48. Definitely not what I would have wanted to pay for Will Fuller, especially with Kenny Stills coming over. But Marquez Valdes-Scantling, he goes for $21, more than what Kenny Galladay actually went for at $18. So that's kind of crazy. Sammy Watkins too, but now Sammy Watkins proving to be extremely valuable. Sammy Watkins is left on the bench in this one. He puts up 39 points, but those points account for nothing when they're on the bench. TJ Hawkinson also 15 points on the bench. DK Metcalf on this team's bench as well. He puts up 2 points. He did see a lot of targets, so maybe that's somebody that you look forward to in bye-week replacements. Sammy Watkins should definitely move into that lineup ASAP. And let's go ahead and move on here to Team Easy Breezy, who is led by Drew Brees and Russell Wilson, putting up 16 and 18 points respectively. A fair outing of 34 points. From the quarterback position, Drew Brees goes for $161 in this auction draft. Russell Wilson, $80. Definitely more of a fan of the Josh Allen for $17. Josh Allen goes for 17 in this one and scores 17 on the bench. Otherwise, a bunch of duds on the bench here. Tevin Coleman goes out with 0 points and an injury in this one. James Conner gives you a dud, but Mark Ingram puts up 16. Joe Mixon also gets injured and gives you a dud. And then the receivers here give you a little bit of points, at least more points than the running backs did, with Keenan Allen putting up 13, 6 from Adam Thielen, and 4 from Michael Thomas. You know, you'd expect a little bit more from such a superior trio there. George Kittle, though, he gives you a dud, and Steven Gostkowski gives 15 points. He definitely puts up his fair share in this one. Broncos defense 0 and Cleveland Browns 4. Total points of 92, enough to give you second to last points. Better days ahead. I definitely look to start Josh Allen. Next week, this week 2 coming up, he is at the Giants. Definitely looks like a tasty matchup for him. He might be able to eclipse some rushing yard totals and then get some rushing touchdowns and passing touchdowns as well. Seems like he might be a good play for this type of league. Last but not least, we have Team Moscow. Team Moscow gets 30 points from Deshaun Watson and 2 points from quarterback Cam Newton. Deshaun Watson, $213 in the auction. Cam goes for a bargain at $47, although Cam was a bit disappointing in this one. This team's running backs are Chris Carson, Josh Jacobs, and Kerryon Johnson. Kerryon Johnson, the only of them to put up a 0, otherwise 30 points combined from Carson and Jacobs, 14 and 16 points respectively. Devontae Adams and Josh Gordon, Hopkins and DJ Moore as well are these teams' wide receivers. Devontae Adams, a big fat 0 in this one. Josh Gordon, surprisingly, gets 6 points off his touchdown. And DeAndre Hopkins goes bananas for 16 points, along with to pair with Deshaun Watson's 30-point performance. Now, DJ Moore gives you 2 points in this one. Hunter Henry, 0 and a broken kneecap. Kai Fairbairn misses a field goal, gives you 4 points, and Philly's defense 4 as well, with Baltimore Ravens defense giving you 9 for a total of 103. Team Moscow finds themselves just outside the middle of the pack with a 6th overall ranking. Team Moscow definitely has some potential here. They left T.Y. Hilton on the bench, Emmanuel Sanders as well. T.Y. puts up 14. Darius Geis is on the bench. Luckily, they didn't start him. He's out with an injury. And Philip Lindsay puts up 0 on the bench as well. I expect to see better days out of these teams' receivers here, especially Devontae Adams. Hopkins, you can maybe expect that, not on a week-to-week basis, but fairly often. And DJ Moore, I expect him to bounce back in tonight's Thursday night game against that terrible Tampa Bay secondary. Better luck for this team. Better luck for everyone who maybe fared in the bottom half of the league. The rankings being New Era, number 1, first overall. Strategy, number 2, just 7 points behind. And then ill-considered, a far and distant 3rd place. Little Red Fournette in 4th. The Process finds himself in the middle of the pack at 104 points, followed by Moscow's 103. Lights Kamara Action with 97. Easy Breezy second to last with 92. And then the Wild Samoans wrapping up the back of the pack with 65 points. So that pretty much does it for this week's episode. I just wanted to mention that we've got a lot of cool stuff going on at FFBcast. I want you guys to check in with us, www.ffbcast.com. I had a lot of fun as well doing your guys' podcast. Your league is super exciting. It's very different. It's intriguing. It's definitely one that I'd like to keep following up on. So, give us a shout out on Twitter. Follow us on YouTube. Check us out on Facebook. We've got some cool stuff coming up as well. We're going to be creating Facebook pages for all of our customers' leagues that are going to be automatically maintained with pictures of your matchups, of your teams, of your roster moves, etc., along with articles about your teams as well that are going to be posted regularly on Facebook, and it'll be a great platform and a spot to post your podcast, such as this one as well, and share it with your league mates and have everybody connect on social media. So that's something that we have coming in the future. Check that out. Keep an eye out for it. And like I said, visit us on ffbcast.com. I really enjoyed myself. Hope you guys had just as much fun as I did today. See you around.
That concludes this episode. Follow us on Twitter at FFBcast and email your questions to ffbcast@gmail.com. See you next time for more fantasy greatness.